Hi everyone, hope you're all doing good. Right, this is a brand new edition of the Tapology Lucky Bastard game. It's the 24th edition, first round draw. Last time out, we had it was just down to the final two. It was ended up being A, or A laughed my ass off, and AZ, however we pronounce it. We normally just call him A on here for make it easier. But Kayla Harrison won for him, so um, here we are, a new game. That means obviously new game, new players. I think there's 31 if I've counted correctly. Maybe I think there's 31 in total. Just get this Excel sheet up for you, and we'll run through those names. They are our current champion A, or Laugh or Nazy, or A as we're going to call him from here on in. Bellatrix, Boom Shakalaka, Calfoth, Canhega Captain Quebec, C. Collins 44, Cheeseball, Cool Hand Puke, Costradamus, Damien Handel 420, Dr. Maxis 2, El Guapo, Foghorn Sam, Fresno MMA, It's Your Boy SB. So that's a debut for you. Good luck in this game. Always great to see some new bloods in this competition. KK Kombu, Knife Rusty is again another debutant in this game. So best of luck to you too. I'll probably be seeing a lot more of you because you got a lifetime pass now, so automatically enters you for every lucky bastard game going forward. So I'm sure you'll quickly become a regular. Uh, Cushy Cake, Mason Zero, Mule Floyd, Piggy Bank, Rigno, Shat, Schwer Industry, Tyson Magamenov, the Dirty UFC Man, the MMA Historian, Trail Allman, Trig, Troz, and ex-con Chris. So that completes our lineup of players for this round of the or this edition rather of the Tapology Lucky Bastard game. Obviously, not all of you make it through to the next round. But for this round anyway, we have UFC Fight Night, Brandon Royval versus Tatsuro Terra. And it's a very interesting battle at the top of the flyweight division. And firstly, it's good to see that the flyweight division's actually getting a few more Fight Night headliners. Because there's a lot of fans which I know just don't take an interest in it. Because it's the smaller weight class, it's the smallest men's weight class there is. And a lot of people just sort of kind of disregard it, so to speak. But there's some good fights going on down there, so it's good to see it getting its little moment in the sun. And this is another example of that. We have a classic example of Brandon Royval, who is very much, I suppose, a veteran of the sport. He's not actually had that many more fights than Tatsuro Terra, to be fair, but he's very much the number one contender. He's last fight beat Brandon Moreno by unanimous decision. Oh no, split decision. Sorry, my bad. I read that one wrong and lost the unanimous decision against Alexandre Pantoja. But given he's the champion now, that 8 losses aged very well. But Tatsuro Terra, on the other hand, undefeated, 16-0. Obviously, an undefeated record always looks good on paper. Um, and he's very diverse as well in terms of his fights. Very exciting fighter because he does finish most of his fights. In his last 5 fights, for instance, he went the distance once, and the other two are 2 subs and 2 KOs or TKOs. So that's he can sub you or he can knock you the fuck out. So it's very dangerous fighters to be coming up against. Um, I've gone back and forth a few times on this, but overall, I'm siding with Brandon Royval, which seems he's definitely the underdog going into this one. But that's simply because we've seen Royval at the highest level, and at the very least, he's always put in a very respectable showing for himself. We haven't quite seen Tatsura Terra against the elites of the division just yet. He's fought some good ranked guys, but he's not quite fought the absolute elite of the division. I think Roy Vattel was very much his first test in that regard. So in that case, I'm always going to go with the veteran. So Brandon Royval to win by a decision is my pick for that one. But of course, you're not here for my rambles. You're here to, well, I mean, I say you're not here for my rambles, so you're trapped with me and my rambles, whether you like it or not. But you're really here to see who you get drawn with in the Lucky Bastard game. First up is our defending champion, reigning, defending, undisputed Lucky Bastard game champion. So good luck on your defense. Let's see who you get drawn with for your first round of your defense. Let's see who you get. And A gets Alex Morono. Alex Morono there for A Master for Nazi. Yeah, no, he's you never quite know what you're going to get with Alex Morono, do you? Because he's loses one, then wins another, loses another, wins another, loses another, wins another. So it depends on which version turns up, really. He's lost to Nico Price last time out by unanimous decision, but didn't look awful in that. So yeah, it's yeah, sort of a bit of a wild card, really. It just depends if he turns up on form or not, really. He's up against Daniel Rodriguez, though, who's I would say obviously he's not quite as experienced, but he has been fighting some of the better names in the welterweight division. Having said that, though, he has lost his last three, but those last three were Kelvin Gastelum, Ian Machado Gary, and Neil Magny. So yeah, he's on a 3-fight losing streak, but they're against some decent names in the division. It's a close fight. It really is. So he's not completely out of it first time round. But having said that, I have got a sneaky feeling Rodriguez might take this one. So a 50-50 chance for our champion. Bellatrix next to take on the wheel. Let's see who Bellatrix gets drawn with. And there you go. Alex Morono's going to have a bit of pressure on him tomorrow night. Bellatrix also gets Alex Morono. Yeah, well, not to repeat too much, but for me, it's very much. I wouldn't say it's a coin flip because I'd say I'm more like 60-40% certain that Daniel Rodriguez is going to win. I've got him to win by decision, but only because by and large he has been fighting the better fighters in the welterweight division. But it comes to that old debate, doesn't it? I mean, what do you rate more? Would you rather have a guy fight the best in the division and lose to them, or would you rather have somebody who's been fighting not quite the best in the division but beating them? It depends on how much do you think somebody improves after back-to-back losses but against elite competition. I'm very much a believer that iron sharpens iron, but at the end of the day, that isn't really. You can also argue it's not really translating into results for Rodriguez. So there's two ways of looking at that, but Alex Morono definitely in with a chance. Maybe not the greatest chance, but you could definitely do a lot worse. Boom Shakalaka is next to take on the wheel. And he gets one of the main eventers, Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval there for Boom Shakalaka. And yeah, that's as well as I've mentioned, even though he's the underdog, I do fancy him to take this again, just based on experience of fighting. As I was saying just a moment ago about fighting the better fighters in the division, I think it's better to fight the best and lose than to not fight them at all. I mean, of course, unless you get absolutely fucking destroyed, but he hasn't. So yeah, that's my logic for siding with Roy Val because we've seen how he handles himself against the best in the division, and he handles himself admirably. He really does. He's if he's not beating Brandon Moreno by split decision, you can argue that either way. Uh, but his loss to Pantoja has definitely aged very well. So there's no doubt he belongs either first or second in the rankings, no lower than second, surely. So yeah, I reckon that's a sneaky good pick, but Tatsura Terra, he's a very dangerous opponent though. So we'll just have to see if the hype is real for Terra. Boom Shakalaka will be hoping it isn't. Cal Foth next to take on the wheel. And he gets Julia Pilastri. Julia Pilastri there for Cal Foth. And that's probably the safest pick so far of the ones that have been drawn. Early days yet, of course, but I think she's got a very good chance against Corey McKenna. She's lost her UFC debut. Okay, so not the best starts there, granted, but she obviously got the Contender Series winner, which I suppose I should stop harping on about Contender Series. Like most people come from Contender Series these days, really, don't they? But she's got the LFA experience behind her as well, so she's coming from the better class of regional of regional fighters. Corey McKenna, more UFC experience, but less experience overall. She's 8-3. Pilastri's 12-4. Um, but the main thing that decides this for me is that Pilastri has looked very good on the ground, very real submission threat during her fights. And Corey McKenna does have submission wins on her record, but against some not well, let's be honest, there's not really great submission artists. Let's be honest, she hasn't got any notable wins that you can say, oh, that's really a really good win there. I I mean, I do like her. I'd enjoy watching her fights, and I'm always going to root for a British fighter. But the truth is, there isn't anyone notable on her record. And when she has come up against some slightly better opposition, particularly ones that got a good submission game like Pilastri has, she has tended to struggle a little bit. So I actually reckon Pilastri could get the submission here, or at the very least, a unanimous decision. I've been optimistic. I've gone with her by a second round submission, but even if she doesn't find the sub, she should be controlling the fight enough to get a decision win there. So I think Halfoth should be quite happy with that one. I think he's got a very good chance of seeing the second round there. Can Hago Ruiz next to take on the wheel? And he gets the other side of the main event, Tatsuro Terra. For Tatsuro Terra there for Kenhago Ruiz. Hey, it's just throwing me off actually because it's a name that isn't pronounced how it's spelled. I hate that. It really annoys my brain. But yeah, so obviously that puts him directly opposite with Boom Shakalaka in the main event. Boom Shakalaka, of course, with Brandon Royval. Personally, I'm siding with Royval, but it seems that everybody else with the brains siding with Tatsuro Terra. They think the hype is real. They think that and to be fair, he has looked very impressive. Especially he's got knockout power. He's got the submission game. It all looks good on paper. Granted, I would just say on his last fight, that was stopped by an injury. The guy, obviously, I think the guy fucked his knee up whilst he was being taken down. Which, okay, you can argue, well, Tatsuro is the one that took him down, so that's fair TKO. But he definitely requires a little bit of luck. In that one. Although having said that, I do think Terra was winning that fight anyway. So again, that's slight asterisk there, but not a huge one really. He is has looked very very impressive, but can he uh, can he last with the elite of the division? We don't know. Maybe if he does beat Royval, and particularly if he finishes Royval, he's surely got to be next in line for a title shot. There's no reason in my mind why this fight shouldn't act as a title decider. Really thinking about it, so yeah, we'll see, won't we? We'll just have to see if Terra's quite at the ready for title contention in the flyweight division. And Hager Ruiz would be hoping so, and Boom Shakalaka would be hoping that hype is just a whole load of smoke and mirrors. Captain Quebec next to take on the wheel. All right on the line there, but the wheel has said that is Themba Gorimbo for Captain Quebec. Themba Gorimbo. And that's probably the best you could hope for in the of that matchup, because the other option, of course, is Nico Price, who, yeah, is like I say, has come off a win last time, which, to be honest, it was against Alex Morono. Honestly, until I'd realised that, I'd come into when I was before I'd made any notes, I'd thought, all right, his last fight, that was his loss to Robbie Lawler in Lawler's retirement fight. But then I was looking it up, and he did have a win over Alex Morono, which maybe call me a casual if you must, but I completely forgot that fight existed. Um, I haven't actually had a chance to rewatch that fight, so I can't actually remember how good or bad he looked in that. But he won by a unanimous decision. So, uh, so yeah. To be fair to him, he's turned around, got a little win, well, broke the loss streak anyway. But Themba Gorimbo, though, anyway, he's won his last three. He's proven time and again he can go the distance, so his stamina's not a problem for him. He's actually looking like a very good prospect at welterweight. Maybe a few more years of development before we can really say that he's in sort of contention. Well, for the higher rankings anyway. But I think this is one of the stronger ones you can get off this card. So if I was Captain Quebec, I'd be very happy with Themba Gorimbo. C. Collins, 44, next to take on the wheel. And C. Collins, 44, gets Jonathan Pierce. Jonathan Pierce, therefore, C. Collins, 44. Jonathan Pierce. Whenever I see the name Jonathan Pierce, my mind always immediately goes to the English football commentator Jonathan Pierce. But yeah, he's also a very respectable mixed martial artist. Obviously, not one and the same, obviously. But can you imagine what the just trying to picture that actually? What would the 50-something-year-old commentator look like in an MMA cage? I don't know. My brain's going off on a tangent there, but anyway, I have got Jonathan Pierce to win his next fight against Pat Sabatini. Anyway, now Pat Sabatini's got the better record, but honestly, I think this is another one of those cases where his 18-5 records, just for the record, it's not quite as good as he looks in the fight. But judging by the way he fights, he doesn't look like somebody who's got 18 wins to his name, if I'm being completely honest. Because he's 3-2 in his last five, but those two losses, he's been finished in both of them. So yeah, it seems a bit too vulnerable to strike sometimes. It seems that sometimes once he gets hit, that kind of opens the floodgates really, and he just gets hit more and more until it just I don't really know how to describe it really, but sometimes he can just crumple. You land one good shot, and then he's just sort of You can land another in quick succession, and then another, and then another, and then before you know it, the fight's over. But so to be honest, I've not been overly impressed with some of Pat Sabatini's performances as of late. But having said that, is Jonathan Pierce really a knockout threat? Yes and no. He's got knockout power, but most of his wins do go the distance. Obviously, if a casual like me has noticed the flaws in Sabatini's defense, so would his coaches. So they'd have been tightening that up in trainings, obviously. I like to think that Sabatini's going to come into this one much improved from what we've seen lately, and or at least a tighter defense, anyways. Or at least so that he won't get knocked out anyway. But I've gone with Jonathan Pierce because I do just rate him as the better fighter overall. Um, and I'm just hoping for Sabatini's sake he comes in with slightly better defense. Jonathan Pierce could knock him out. I'd say it's more likely he drags it out for a points win. Um, but either way, for C Collins 44, that's quite a good pick, that one. So yeah, not bad at all. Could definitely be worse. Cheeseball next to take on the wheel. Let's see who Cheeseball gets drawn with. And he gets Dan Argueta. I probably haven't pronounced that one right, but Dan Argueta there for Cheeseball. And I've gone with his opponent, Cody Haddon, to win this one. It's honestly, I'm not really sure what to make of Dan Argueta, if I'm being completely honest, because his record as of late is just so unpredictable. Here's his last five, in order from most recent to his to the fifth most recent. A loss, a draw, a no contest, that was a premature stoppage, a win, and a loss. So we really don't. That's almost every possible MMA outcome covered in his last five fights almost. So when it seems like he's just got this energy about him when he steps into the cage, quite literally, fucking anything can happen. I mean, obviously that's true for any MMA fight, but with Dan Argueta, I don't know what it is, but his fights are always interesting. I give him that, but that's for me. It isn't reliable enough, especially when you're coming up against Cody Haddon, who's very consistent, 7 wins, 1 loss. Okay, it's his UFC debut, so Argueta does have more UFC experience behind him. But Haddon has looked good. He's in his previous performance, particularly on Contender Series, and on his record, he has he does have KO wins as well, so he's got a bit of power to him. But his best performances, particularly his Contender Series ones, come by submission. So, and against somebody who's as unpredictable as Dan Argueta, that's enough for me to side with him. So I've gone with Cody Haddon there for a decision. Although Cheeseball has got one of the most wildcard picks you can probably get, not just in this card, but quite possibly the entire UFC roster at the moment. Cool Hand Puke next to take on the wheel, or at least it will when my page loads again. Here we go. Cool Hand Puke is at the mercy of the wheel now. And the wheel was given him Clayton Carpenter. Clayton Carpenter there for Cool Hand Puke. Obviously, you won't have to wait too long to find out his fate. It's one of the opening fights. So also opens with a flyweight fight, ends with a flyweight fight. Also got a flyweight fight almost in the middle. Quite nice spacing for flyweight enjoyers like myself. Anyway, as for Clayton Carpenter's particular fights, he's undefeated, 7-0. Got 1 win in the UFC last time out. He's got Contender Series win, but he's also the LFA as well behind him. So he's got quite a good little record going for him. I think he's quite a strong prospect, but I think this he's up against Lucas Rocha, who I think is quite a bad matchup, simply because there is quite a golfing experience. Lucas Rocha, 17-1, which okay, not against always the best opposition, the truth be told, but um, yeah, it's just that many more fights. You do learn a thing or two from them, and when you're talking about prospects with I'd say less than 10 fights, that's a little bit of experience. Those little tricks you learn, those little uh moments where you've been put under pressure, you found yourself in an oh shit situation and got yourself out of it, they can make all the difference in terms of how well in terms of getting you out of a potential fight ending sequence. Has Clayton Carpenter really faced one of those situations yet? I wouldn't say so, especially not being, especially with being undefeated as well. Um, it's kind of a double-edged sword being undefeated, isn't it? Because I mean, on one hand, it's like, well, you're so good, nobody's been able to beat you so far. But then that also means, well, you don't really know your limitations. You don't really know your weaknesses necessarily. Some do, but I'm sure, but obviously they're keeping their mouth shut about it, obviously. But I don't know. I just don't think this is a very fair debut matchup. Of course, Lucas Ross, this is also his debut as well. Well, it was nicely Carpenter's debut, got him muddled up there. It's Carpenter's had a fight in the UFC. Rocher's the one making his debut there, got him muddled up there. Um, but yeah, I think Rocha's experience could make the difference here. So I've gone with Rocha for a second round knockout. But yeah, definitely an interesting fight to open the card. Costradamus is gonna well, he's facing the wheel right now actually, and he also gets Clayton Carpenter. Uh, so well, do I just I'm just copy and paste the last 5 minutes of what I've just said there, I guess. Yeah. Um, well, I fancy Lucas Rocha. What can I say? I think well, not like that. Because that came out wrong. I don't fancy Lucas Rocha in that sense. No, but I mean, I fancy him to win the fight. You know, um, oh, you know what I mean. Oh dear. All right. If I did a take after every blooper like that, a new take, this thing would take forever to record. I swear. Um. Anyway. Yeah, Clayton Carpenter as well. So all I can say to that is, without repeating myself, cool hand puke, Costradamus. Good luck to both of you. Is Clayton Carpenter's responsible for your fate in this game? Damien Handel 420 next to face the wheel. Let's see. Who is the duck going to get? He gets Jun Young Park. Jun Young Park there for Damien Handel 420, or the duck as he's more affectionately known as. In the co-main event, up against Brad Tavares, I've got Young Park to win second round submission here. Uh, he's that's the main thing to note about him. Really, he's a dangerous submission. He's definitely much more than his striking game. If he prefers to take it to the ground, and that's where his strengths lie. So why not take it to the ground? Look for that sub. It's just another way of trying to win fights in MMA. Obviously, um, not too much difference in terms of experience. Brad Tavares 20 wins, 9 losses. Jung Yun Park is 17-6. Um, having said that, Brad Tavares is, I would say, has fought the better opposition in the middleweight division. He's gone the distance with Dricus Duplessis a couple of years back. That's aged very well now. He lost that one, obviously. I just mentioned that, but he's still going the distance with the guy that's now the middleweight champion. That's no mean feat. Um, So yeah, that's all I can say for that one is overall I think Park will find a way of getting another sub in this fight. That's just my best guess of this. But certainly won't be an easy fight. Brad Tavares will make him work for that sub if he finds it. But overall, I think that is a decent selection to try and get you through to the next round. Dr. Maxis 2 next to take on the wheel. Let's see who he's going to be rooting for tomorrow night. And he gets Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel Rodriguez for Dr. Maxis 2. And again, I've got him to win this by a decision. Obviously, he's up against Alex Morono, who current Lucky Bastard Game champion. Is got us alongside Bellatrix as well, of course. So this could potentially be our Lucky Bastard game, Lucky Bastard Game main event, so to speak. And yeah, this is the first time no Rodriguez has been drawn, and he's the one I fancy to get the win here. I need to stop using that term fancy, and I need to expand my vocabulary a bit more. Anyway, lost his last three, but as I mentioned earlier, they were against Gastelum, Ian Gary, and Neil Magny. So yeah, not bad losses at all. Um, so yeah, it's just of course a little bit of a coin flip fight, but I do reckon that Rodriguez is going to take this one. El Guapo next to take on the wheel. Let's see what the wheel has in store for him. Or her. Could be a her, we don't know. Chidi Neokwani. I've probably not pronounced that one right, so I apologize if not. But Chidi Neokwani, therefore, El Guapo. Kuani. I've probably not spelt that right either. But one thing is for sure, he does look like a good prospect. Got a fair bit of experience behind him as well for well, I suppose for being a prospect, really, isn't it? It's 23 wins, 10 losses, so he's been around the block a few times. Now he's 2-3 in his last five. That doesn't look too great on paper, but they have all been in the UFC. But I'm just mentioning that because his opponent, Jared Gooden, he's an interesting one as well. I'll tell you that. This is his second. This is now going to be his third. He's had two UFC fights recently, but this is his second spell in the promotion. He had another run in the UFC a few years back. When it fought some regional ones, and then he's back here in the big time. So I suppose you could also argue that a smarter man than me would argue that that means he's going to be more determined, more motivated to try and prove he belongs in the UFC. So who knows? A little bit of psychological warfare going on there, but I do favour Chidi Neokwani for that one. Which obviously, well, I suppose it's good news for El Guapo, and whether he wants my blessing on that one, I'm not sure. He probably wouldn't, would he? Let's be honest. Yeah, so if I mean, obviously, just for the record, on my last UFC one, I of my 12 predictions, and this is just fighters I predicted to win. Of them, I got 3 out of 12 right. So yeah, I don't know shit about MMA. So yeah, whether my backing is a good thing or not, you can make your own mind up about that one. Foghorn Sam next to take on the wheel. He was one of the finalists last time against myself and Nazy. Just came up short with Stephen Thompson, who got knocked out, but still, let's see if he just one round luckier this time around. Let's see. Let's see what the wheel's got in store for him this time. And he's also drawn with Daniel Rodriguez there. So yeah, Daniel Rodriguez, Dr. Maxis 2's also been drawn with him. Funny enough, actually, coincidentally, this puts him in a head-to-head against the current champion A, who obviously fought in the final of the last game. So the two remaining lucky bastards, which isn't always a guarantee, by the way. We can have any number of players in the final theoretically. I mean, hell, we could, in theory, you could have a first round where everyone gets a losing fighter, depending if the wheel picks the same bunch of fighters over and over. But yeah, no, this so the two that made it to the last two last time, which again, no guarantee of that, they find themselves with opposite fighters in the very first round of this one. So we're definitely not going to be having a repeat final this time around, at least not between those two. As I mentioned just a moment ago, I do fancy Rodriguez in that one, but that's 2v2 in what's shaping up to be our Lucky Bastard Game main events. Dr. Maxis and Foghorn Sam with Daniel Rodriguez, and A and Bellatrix with Alex Morono. Anyway, Fresno MMA. Next to take on the wheel. Good to see him back in the game. Is comes and goes from this game. Always welcome to play. Always great to have him in the mix. So let's see if the wheel is kind to him on this return. And he gets Clayton Carpenter, who I have just slagged off a whole bunch of times on this video. So obviously the wheel isn't as enthusiastic about his return as I am. Having said that, I suppose it depends on what your opinion on that fight is. And as I've already mentioned, I reckon Lucas Rocha is going to be getting the win, and a knockout win at that. Mostly based on that absolute gorgeous, or I suppose it's one way of wording it, isn't it? Gorgeous, fancy. I've got to be so careful. Yeah, 50 years ago, they'd have arrested me for talking like this, I swear. But no, it's Lucas Rocha there. I reckon he's going to get the knockout win. But as I was saying, that mostly based off that knee they landed in the Contender Series last time we saw him. We'll see if he can produce that this time around. But Fresno MMA will certainly be hoping not, and hoping that Clayton Carpenter remains undefeated come the end of that opening fight. One of our debutants. It's your boy SB. I'm assuming it's pronounced it's your boy SB rather than it's your boys, which doesn't make sense. I suppose there's probably got to be an apostrophe or two in there somewhere, maybe an Oxford comma, definitely a space. But hey, I'm not going to judge how people stylize their names. Just makes it. Well, it just gives me more opportunity of butchering the pronunciation, doesn't it? But it's your boy SB. Good luck to you. Always great to see new people in the game, regardless of how you pronounce their names. Let's see who your very first fighter is going to be. And your very first fighter in the Tapology Lucky Bastard game is CJ Vergara. CJ Vergara there. First time he's come up in this game. Been harping on about how this could be a showcase for the flyweights, and CJ Vergara he's been one of the better. I'd say, well, let's be honest, he's a gatekeeper of the division. There's no shame in that. He's a very tough gatekeeper at that. He's turns away ones that aren't quite at that level yet. The trouble is, I think his opponent Ramazan Ramaz. I've butchered this one as well. I should call him Ramazan Temirov. Ramazan Temirov, rather. He looks very good. 17-2. This is his UFC debut, but his last two fights were KO wins in Rising, which Rising. I still very much rate it as a promotion. I really do. Okay, it's not quite as good as perhaps some of the others. I would say for instance, a high level contender, Cage Warriors fighter rather, would be better than the Rising one, but obviously that is partly biased as well. But in terms of the regional MMA scene, Rising seriously fly under the radar. Whenever they put on a show, it is worth checking out. Piri Pashaka, probably the most notable one recently to come over from Rising. Uh, but yeah, no, when somebody comes over from Rising to the UFC, pay attention. That's my advice, and that's what I'm following with this one. I've got him to win by second round knockout. I reckon that KO streak in Rising will 100% transfer over to the UFC, or at least over to CJ Vergara, um, which obviously is not good for. It's your boy SB. The amount of times I just ramble on about a fighter and then just completely forget that that's the fighter the person's been drawn with. Like, it must be a crushing blow for anyone that's gets drawn with that fighter. Just like, oh yeah, you get drawn with this fighter, and then spend the next 5 minutes taking a massive fucking shit right all over them, and subsequently your hopes and dreams of reaching the next round. And I can only apologize, uh, but well, yeah, no, all I can be is honest. But that's not an ideal first ever pick for you, I'm afraid. KK Kombu next to take on the wheel. I mean, of course, I will just put a little disclaimer out there. I've want massive respect for all the fighters that are fighting. It's just obviously if I think one's going to lose, I'm just going to say they're going to lose, and how if I reckon how. Anyway, that was KK Kombu. I think I've got that in just before the disclaimer. He's got Sean Sharaf. Sean uh Sean Sharaf there for KK Kombu. And again, it's a good thing I've just made that disclaimer because I reckon that Junior Tarfa's going to knock him out in the first round. It's a good thing I'm not with any PR agency. I'd be giving them a nightmare, wouldn't I? But anyway, Junior Tafa, I reckon. Okay, so his 5-3 record on paper, it doesn't look great. So it doesn't. If you see somebody that's 5-3, you're not going to think, oh yes, they're a UFC fighter. But Junior Taffa, though, again, as I've mentioned about Rising, he's got obviously he's fought obviously in the UFC. That obviously is better than Rising for a start, but he's Rising before that as well. When you compare that to Sean Sharaf, who isn't overly experienced himself, he's 4-0, undefeated technically, but all four of those have come by KO, and I'm going to be completely honest, not against the most impressive opponents in the regional scene. And to me, this is another example. I can say quite confidently, I don't think Sean Sharaf has really been tested in the cage, and Junior Tuffer, despite his record, is a much better fighter than this. This is a mismatch, in my opinion. Obviously, at this sort of level heavyweight, so there's an entry level heavyweight fight, it's hard not to make mismatches because sometimes I'd say the lowest. Take the shittest heavyweight UFC fighter, whoever you consider to be the shittest. I'm not saying that is Junior Taffa because that is. I absolutely do not believe that is the case. Junior Taffa wouldn't probably isn't even bottom 5 UFC heavyweights in my opinion. Probably not even bottom 10 really. I'm just trying to think who else is it. Yeah, it's quite a shallow division when you think about it. But I'd say if you take them and then look at some of the best of the regional scene, there's still quite a gap. There seems to be after the UFC, the quality of heavyweight fighters does drop off massively. The only ones that come close are other heavyweight veterans who have had UFC runs, but then had their time and are just sort of a little bit past their prime, but still fighting at a high level in places like Bellator and PFL. And quite a few have turned up on CFFC quite a few times I noticed as well. Um, but anyway, all I'm saying is there's a gap between somebody like Sean Sharaf coming into the UFC's heavyweight division and Junior Tuffer, who's made a bit of a name for himself in the promotion already and has been good enough for Ryzen's heavyweight division as well. I suppose in many ways you could consider Ryzen the spiritual successor to Pride, perhaps. In terms of aesthetics, it certainly looks not quite the same quality, obviously, but if you didn't know better, you'd think I was being paid by Ryzen for this, wouldn't you? But anyway, completely going off tangent again before I waste any more time. I just don't think Sean Sharaf has a chance in this fight. So sorry, KK Kombu, but I have metaphorically just taken a shit all over your pick there. Or well, it's not your pick. Obviously, you didn't have any choice in the matter. But who knows? Maybe it's heavyweight. One punch can change everything. Who knows? Knife Rusty, another debutant next to take on the wheel. Good luck to you as well. And yeah, let's see who you get for your first ever fighter. Let's see who Knife Rusty's first ever Lucky Bastard Game fighter is. And it's one I have been banging the drums for a few times in this video. Lucas Rocha. Lucas Rocha there for Knife Rusty. As I say, opening fight, won't have to wait too long for it. And yeah, there's been a few people now that have had Clayton Carpenter. And I've been going on how I think Rocha's going to beat Carpenter, despite being the debutant, the one that whereas Carpenter does have that UFC fight to his credit. I think Rocha's going to win this, and quite comfortably potentially as well, as second round knockout. Not an awful lot I can really say given the amount of times I've seemingly covered this fight, but a very good first ever pick for Knife Rusty there. Cushy Cake next to take on the wheel. Once this goes back to the webpage, here we go. And he gets Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson for Cushy Cake there. First time he's come up. So enjoy a nice little ramble. Grant Dawson obviously up against Rafa Garcia. First time his whole fight's come up. And I've got Grant Dawson to win by decision. Get that one out of the way first. So I think this is a fairly decent pick. It's not a certainty. It's a close fight. Rafa Garcia absolutely absolutely can get the win, as most of Garcia's wins have come by decision, or at least as of late anyway. Whereas Grant Dawson, I'm only really backing him because, like Garcia, he can also go the distance. So there's not a lot to split in terms of the gas tank, but Grant Dawson is a much more of a submission threat than Garcia is, in my opinion. So I think that's another thing to consider. I think this fight's going the distance 100%, and I think by the end of it, Grant Dawson, through at least submission attempts, if not getting a submission, he's going to. I'm sure that will be reflected in the judges' scorecards. That's yeah, nothing more to it. I reckon that he's most likely to win the decision of these two, but it's going to be a close 15-minute fight, that's for sure. But not too bad. Mason O or Mason Zero, however you want to stylize it, up next. Let's see who gets drawn with for the first round. And he gets CJ Vergara as well. So it's just like the debutant, it's your boy SB. CJ Vergara is also representing Mason Zero. And yeah, as I've mentioned, I do fancy Ramazan Temirov in this one. Looked very impressive over at Rising, and I can see that translating to the UFC, coming through and potentially finishing Vergara here. Let's flip it around. Let's see what kind of offense Vergara has for uh, Temerov, and not an awful lot, in my opinion. He can drag it out to a distance. Maybe he can get a win that way, but overall, I just see Temerov doing much better work. So yeah, without wanting to glaze Rising too much more than I already have in this video, I'm not overly optimistic for Mason Zero's chances there. So we move on to Mule Floyd. Mule Floyd next, take on the wheel. This is going to be quite a long video. Still quite a few of you left in this. Alex Morono. There we go. So that's another one joining Bellatrix and A. Is it Bellatrix and A? It's got Morono. Yeah, I'm sure it is, isn't it? Yeah, it's Bellatrix and A. It's got Alex Morono there in what is well, I suppose almost undeniably the main event, the Lucky Bastard Game main event for this one. As I've already mentioned countless times, I've gone with Rodriguez simply because, yes, he is on a 3-fight losing streak, but those 3 are against good names in the division. He's going to come back from those defeats with a worse record, but as a better fighter, and that's that's the main thing, really, because this isn't boxing. This is MMA. Losses happen, and you're not immediately shit once you lose your or you can rack up almost double figure numbers of losses, and you're still perceived as a serious threat. But anyway, I think he's those 3 maybe not a good experience for him personally, but as a fighter, it would have improved him, I'm sure. So, well, we'll just have to see who comes out on top of that one. Very interesting head-to-head situations going on there. Piggy Bank next to take on the wheel. Let's see who's again Ramazan Temerov. Therefore, Piggy Bank. It's actually the first time he's been drawn because everybody else has been that's had this fight has been drawn with CJ Vergara. As for Temerov, I've been spent most of the time talking about him, so not really much I can add to that, rather than well, Piggy Bank can consider himself a bit of a lucky bastard for getting what I consider to be the much better side of that fight. So yeah, that's I'm sure if Piggy Bank has been watching Rising, he might be inclined to agree with me. Anyone not watching Rising, they're missing out, that's for sure. Rigno next to take on the wheel. Let's see who Rigno gets. He gets Clayton Carpenter. Another one I've gone over quite a few times now. That's the only thing with the first round, because there's so many of you in the first round. Obviously, we start doubling up, and it feels like the first half of the people I end up spending a good 5 or 10 minutes rambling about each of them, but as we get towards the bottom, it gets to the stage like, well, I've already mentioned them 3 or 4 times now. I can't really say much more about them. But yeah, this is so yeah, those alphabetically at the bottom. It's not because if I'm talking less about your pick, it's nothing personal. I've just already rambled enough about them. Otherwise, these videos are already bloody feature length as they are. Due to my inability to be concise about things. But anyway, Clayton Carpenter, undefeated, but only for one more day, I reckon. Lucas Roch is going to take that O from him. That's my bold prediction. Can Carpenter win this one? Potentially. I don't think it's very likely, though. Shat next to take on the wheel. And here we go again. Ramazan Temirov. I spent all video glazing about him when his opponent comes up, and then here we are. He gets drawn out twice, which I suppose is now becoming a slight rival to the Tapology Lucky Bastard Game main event. So yeah, certainly a interesting flyweight matchup in the middle of the card. Keep you interested if you know what it's like halfway through a UFC card. Yeah, those beers are starting to hit a little bit. You're not completely pissed, but you've had enough fights to whet your appetite, and then you're getting into the better quality fights in the main cards. Yeah, and well, this is probably that middle point, really. Plenty of lucky bastards interest if you're still sober enough to keep track at that point. Probably why I keep forgetting about so many fights because I'm completely shit faced drunk by the time main events most come around. Either that or it's also 4 in the morning and I'm just completely fucking tired. But anyway, lost track again. Shat Ramazan Temirov there. I reckon that's a good pick. So Shat's got quite a good chance of getting through. Schwer Industry next to face the Wheel of Doom. And he gets Nico Price. That is Nico Price for Schwer Industry. Yes, he's obviously last time out beat Alex Morono. I've noticed a lot of times the fighters that have fought their last opponent, they obviously end up on the same card as the opponent they last fought, which is I've always subconscious. I know obviously in terms of scheduling, and it obviously makes sense. They're ready to fight again around the same time. I've always wondered if that's been somewhat deliberate on the UFC's part, but anyway, about Nico Price up against Themba Garimbo. Oh, yeah, I reckon Themba Garimbo is going to be taking this one. Uh, he's got the stamina to drag. If Nico Price takes it the distance with him, Themba Garimbo is going to be there all the way. And yeah, will Nico Price have the answer to that? He had the answer to that against Alex Morono, but Alex Morono, is he? That does raise the question as well. Who'd win in a fight between Themba Garimo and Alex Morono? Um, Honestly, I think right now I would take Themba Garimbo. Um, so yeah, by that logic or that rough MMA maths there, Themba Garimbo for a decision win is my pick. So I think you might just need a little bit of luck there, Schwer Industry. Uh, Tyson Magamanov. There's quite a lot of people in with T's in this game. I've only just noticed that. Ty, the Dirty UFC man, MMA historian, Trail Allman, Trig, Tross. Yeah, got quite a lot of T's going on here. Tyson Magamanov next to face the wheel. And he gets Jonathan Pierce. Jonathan Pierce there for Tyson Magamanov. And as I've said, I do fancy him because I'm just not been overly impressed with Pat Sabatini. Will Sabatini make those improvements I've mentioned earlier? Will he tighten up his defense a little bit more? Will he just react better to getting hit? That's the thing. So we'll see with Jonathan Pierce, who isn't the most threatening in terms of punching power. I'd say in terms of he's not one of the lights out knockout artists that come along every now and then, but he is a very well rounded fighter, which is also a problem. He's good enough that he's always going to be there throughout the duration of the fight. He more than happy to drag you out to the judges because he knows that his volume and workload most of the time has been enough to get the nods from the judges. So yeah, Jonathan Pierce for a unanimous decision win there, in my opinion. And obviously to take Tyson Megamanov through to the next round as well. The Dirty UFC Man is next to face the wheel. Let's see what the wheel has in store for him. And he gets Chidi Neokwani. Chidi Neokwani there for the Dirty UFC Man. And again, that's one of the better ones, in my opinion, as well. Got him to win by decision. Simply because, yeah, like I say, Jared Gooden, yes, on a two fight, two UFC fights recently, but it's there's still questions about how long he's going to be around in the UFC for. Really, it's you can never be overly confident in someone that gets cut and then comes back again because the UFC would sometimes do that at short notice. But Gooden, to be fair to him, he has been taking that chance. He hasn't really put a foot wrong since his return, to his credit. So, and I'm sure he'll be motivated to continue that. So that's probably the main threat to that, to Chidi Neokuma. Uh, yeah, mainly just the attitude to it. I suppose Gooden's got the motivation. I'm not saying that obviously Neokwani doesn't, but yeah, no, it's potentially dangerous from that point of view. But overall, I do still think that Neokwani is the better fighter. Uh, just slight level above Gooden in terms of well, in terms of overall quality, which obviously is what the Dirty UFC Man would like to hear. The MMA historian is next to face the wheel, down to the final five this time. So the end is in sight. You no longer have to endure my rambles for too much longer. And Julia Palastri comes up again for the MMA historian. And as I've mentioned earlier, that's one of the better ones you can get on that card. Obviously, she's fighting not Megan Corey McKenna. Where did I get Megan from? Uh, Corey McKenna there, and I reckon she can finish McKenna. I reckon she can get the submission, or at the very least, a decision. But I think Pilastri's the type of fighter that will be able to put a lot of pressure onto McKenna, and rather than just necessarily completely outskilling her or outmatching her, she's this kind of fighter that would force, I suppose, a relatively inexperienced fighter like McKenna into making mistakes rather than just outright beating them. It's a case of put them under pressure. You don't always think straight. You accidentally give up an arm or a leg or a neck or something, and then before you know it, that's snatched and you're in too deep, and it's yeah, it's hap or snap time, or nap time, or piss yourself time. I don't know what you want to call it. Um, so yeah, I think this is very dangerous. Well, from McKenna's point of view, obviously Pilastri's got a good chance of getting through. It seems the ones at the bottom half here seems to be getting better treatment from the wheel. So yeah, if you're going to enter the Lucky Bastard game, make sure your name starts with a letter further down the alphabet. Speaking of that alphabet, next along the line is Trail Allman. So let's see who Trail Allman gets for his pick. Jared Gooden. I think that might actually be the first. Is that? Yeah, that's the first time Jared Gooden himself has actually come up, and yeah, he's got the motivation behind it. He does have that prior UFC experience from a few years back. Yes, he would have learned lessons from that. But how much of that are we seeing in this game? How much? I suppose I'll have to go back and rewatch those old fights of his to see how much he's improved since then. No doubt there will be some improvement, but I can't really remember Gooden's initial UFC run, if I'm being completely honest, not off the top of my head. So that'll be an interesting little side project to work on when I find another spare hour or two. But having said, I do still fancy Chidi Neokwani there for decision, just because I think it's just a more well-rounded fighter. Trig, next to take on the wheel. Sounded like my voice broke for a second then when I said Trig. And he gets the opponents in that one. There's been quite a few going on to this fight as well. We got like three main little rivals for the main event of the Lucky Bastard game. But yes, just to confirm, Chidi Neokwana there for Trig as well. So yeah, that's certainly makes interesting dynamic, and not more that I can add to that than I already have half a dozen times already. That Near Kawana, more well rounded. I think that's going to be enough to see him through, get the decision win here. Troz next to face the wheel, the penultimate one to find out his fate for tomorrow night. And he gets one of the co-main eventers, Jun Young Park. Somebody else had Jun Young Park earlier. Let me just bear with me a second. Let me refresh my memory, scroll up a bit. It was Damien Handel for 20 that had Jun Young Park there as well. So, and only mentioning that because I think he's got quite a good chance of going through. This is one of the better. It's still a very close fight, but it is one of the better chances. They've got some close matches throughout the whole card. I must admit that. So fair play to the matchmakers in this one. This could be a really good little card. This could really fly under the radar. There's going to be at least 5 or 6 of these fights. I reckon that we're going to look back and say, yeah, that was good. That wasn't half bad. So hopefully that's the case. And hopefully for Troz, Jun Young Park gets it done for him. And finally, but by no means least, although I'm sure his opinion of me differs, it's ex-con Chris. Let's see who ex-con Chris gets drawn with for tomorrow night's draw. And he gets Nico Price. Nico Price for ex-con Chris. As I've mentioned quite a few times already, I think it's Themba Garimbo that's going to come out of this one victorious. And Nico Price has certainly got a little more experience behind him. He's got that going for him. So, yeah. Although, in all honesty, I think that is pretty much all he's got going for him, really. But how much of a difference will that make? Will he make that experience count against Themba Garimbo? Ex-con Chris would certainly hope so. Right. So that concludes the draw for the first round of the Tapology Lucky Bastard Game 24th edition. I think we're on this screen now. We're back to sharing our Excel sheets. Here we go. I'm not going to try and tie up and loop the loops on all of the who's got who's fighting who, blah, 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 because that would just take forever. But just to run through the names and who's got who. Our current defending champion, has got Alex Morono, as does Bellatrix. Boom Shakalaka with Brandon Royval. Cal Foth with Julia Palastri. Kanhego Ariz with Tatsura Terra. Captain Quebec with Themba Garimbo. C. Collins 44 with Jonathan Pierce. Cheeseball with Dan Argueta. Cool Hand Puke with Clayton Carpenter, as too does Costradamus. Damien Handel for 20 with Jun Young Park. Dr. Maxis 2 with Daniel Rodriguez. El Guapo with Chidi Neokwana. Foghorn Sam with Daniel Rodriguez. Fresno MMA with Clayton Carpenter. Zabington's It's Ya Boy SB with CJ Vergara. KK Combo with Sean Sharaf. Knife Rusty, the other debutant in this edition, with Lucas Rocha. Cushy Cake with Grant Dawson. Mason Zero with CJ Vergara. Mule Floyd with Alex Morono. Piggy Bank with Ramazan Temirov. Rigno with Clayton Carpenter. Shat with Ramazan Temirov. Schwer Industry with Nico Price, Tyson Magamanov with Jonathan Pierce, The Dirty UFC Man with Chidi Neokwana. Dirty UFC Man Chidi Neokwana, The MMA Historian with Julia Pilastri, Trail Allman with Jared Gooden, Trig with Chidi Neokwana, Trog. That's a bit. No, that's the ungodly love child between Trig and Troz, isn't it? But no, it's Trig with Chidi Neokwana and Troz with Jung Yun Park and ex-convict Christopher, if you want to call him by his full name, with Nico Price. So that concludes the first round draw for the 24th edition. Yeah, obviously mixed bag always is with the first round with this many people in it. All I can say is good luck to all of you. Let's see what happens tomorrow night. Now that we you know who you're drawn with now, let's just sit back and enjoy the fights. Anyway, only other I just spilled my fucking drink everywhere. Fuck me, fuck's sake. That is fucking bullshit. All over the carpet. Lovely stuff. Kitchen towel needed for that shit. Right, anyway. Ignoring the fact my drink has just died a fucking death. Good luck to all of you tomorrow night. If you've got any picks of any bets on this card, good luck with those as well. Good luck with your picks in Tapology, and we'll see how many of you make it through to the second round. But until then, so long for now.